Batman vs. Superman is the final movie we are looking at in this Superman retrospective series. So we're going to talk about it because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to this movie. So smash your thoughts down in the comment section below. Smash that like button, click subscribe, and let's talk Batman vs. Superman. Okay, so Batman vs. Superman. Zack Snyder's second movie in the DCEU that came out in 2016. Now, firstly, before we get into it, I just want to give a massive shout out to John, who is my good friend. You know exactly who you are. Thank you for this idea. He came up with this idea of doing Superman and doing the transitions from the original Superman movie to Batman vs. Superman. So this idea is his that he gave me. You guys voted upon it. So thank you again, John. Shout out to you for this idea. Now, when it comes to Batman vs. Superman, I remember watching this in theaters for the very first time and walking out of the theater and thinking to myself, what crap was I watching just then? What was that? I absolutely hated this movie with a passion. Now, I loved Man of Steel, and you guys know how much I love Man of Steel. My favorite comic book movie of all time. Absolutely loved it. So to hear that Batman vs. Superman was coming by Zack Snyder again, who just did Man of Steel, I was super hyped. But I was disappointed back then. But nevertheless, it is now 2023. I have matured. I have grown. I have watched other movies. I've developed taste and all this other stuff over the years. Now we are talking the ultimate version. We are not talking the theatrical version because the theatrical version is awful. We're talking about the ultimate cut, the 3-hour edition, the proper movie. Now, after watching it, I am here to say I do not think this is one of the worst comic book movies of all time anymore. I no longer hate this movie with a passion. While I do have problems with Batman vs. Superman, I also don't mind it now. After rewatching it, I was a bit harsh. Let's be real. I was very harsh on this movie. The theatrical version, I don't give a shit. That is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. Like, it's horrible. The ultimate cut, though, does make this a lot better. But, like I said, I still have some problems. And we're going to talk about that. Now, firstly, I want to talk about one issue that I really have with this movie. And for me personally, this movie doesn't feel like a direct sequel to Man of Steel. Now, I've always wanted Man of Steel 2. I've been waiting for it. And I feel like this movie would benefit a lot from having a Man of Steel 2 and a solo Batman movie with Ben Affleck. For me personally, I feel like those two, if you gave me that before this movie, I think it actually works better. Because I feel like there's some gaps missing when it comes to this movie. Now, this movie does adapt one of the most iconic storylines in comic book history, the death of Superman. Now, I love the death of Superman. I absolutely love that comic. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I thought the animated version that they did, that DC did do, was actually done with justice. I really like that version. It's probably my favorite death of the Superman, like, movie-wise version of it. And I felt like they did that better than what they did here. Now, Zack tried to bring that to life, and I just felt like, one, it was too early. And why I think it's too early with the whole death of the Superman is because this is the second movie in the DCEU. Like, it's the second movie. We've only just had one movie with Superman. While I'm getting attached to Superman there, a Man of Steel 2 would have given you more breathing time with Superman, allowing you to get more attached to him and starting to understand the world living with Superman. And then you hit them with that massive event of the death of Superman. So I feel like this is a good movie before a Justice League movie, which is what it was. But it's missing that meat beforehand. And having a Batman movie as well there would have enhanced Ben Affleck's Batman. Because, look, a lot of people have a problem with Ben Affleck's Batman in this movie. Because he kills, because he uses guns, etc, etc. You guys know the arguments. I don't need to rally them off anymore. For me personally, I don't think it's that big of an issue because of one thing that we later on find out about this Batman, about Robin with Joker. We know about that stuff, how Robin died on Batman's watch. give me that movie beforehand. I feel like if we had that movie where we actually saw that event, it would then make Batman's transition to what he is in this movie a lot more justifiable. Because I feel like that's what it's missing. While I get why Batman is the way he is, if I had seen that incident happen, I understand the psychological effect that it's had on Batman and why he is the way he is. And then having him come back full circle when Superman dies and him saying that he failed him when he was alive, I'm not going to fail him in death, is him getting back his humanity and not feeling like he needs to kill people to save people and to, brand the criminals and everything like that. So that for me is one thing that I find an issue with this movie, is it's missing those two key elements when it comes to Superman and Batman that would drive this movie into a better light. Now, as for the third act as well, Doomsday. Doomsday. I'm not the biggest fan of this Doomsday. I really am not. I know some people say that Doomsday's still out there. To me, what would have worked better is if Lex created like a Bizarro. For instance, if Lex was able to create a being like Bizarro and use that as the final battle, I think that would have been better than actually having, the idea of Doomsday there. I feel like Lex could have been using Zord, creating a Bizarro version of Superman and having him go out and do stuff that is turning the public onto Superman. And they're like, wait a second, why is Superman doing that? But it's really the Bizarro version. And then that's when the battle happens at the end there with the Trinity fighting Bizarro, etc. You could do that. That, to me personally, would have worked better than having Doomsday. Because, one, you're using Doomsday really, really early. And you're doing the death of Superman very early. I feel like that's probably one problem and that I would change in this movie, is I would change that villain at the end. As for Lex Luthor himself, Lex Luthor. Look, Jesse Eisenberg. I absolutely love Jesse Eisenberg. I think he's fantastic in The Social Network. I think he's fantastic in Zombieland. I think he is a fantastic actor. However, I do feel like he's miscast. I really do. I just don't feel like he is Lex Luthor. And when I think of Lex Luthor, and then I think of him going up against Superman, you've got to be intimidating. And I just don't feel like Jesse Eisenberg is intimidating. I don't feel like if I was standing there next to him and he was looking at me like that, I'd be like scared of him. So I feel like maybe giving us someone that has that physicality look to him of a Lex Luthor that is more intimidating would have worked better. While I don't hate Lex, I just think it's a miscasting. Everything else about Lex, I don't mind. I like the motivation of him with the idea of getting rid of Superman. I like that transition that he's going through. And there's one particular moment where he's in his house and he says, do you think my father would mind if I changed one thing? Because that painting's upside down. And he talks about how demons come from the sky, not the hell beneath us. I thought that is very awesome. Like, that is such a good quote. And it's just, that is Lex Luthor right there. So there are moments here where I really thoroughly think there's Lex's personality, but then the face doesn't match it. That's my issue with Lex there. Now, as for the actual characterization of Superman himself, I really enjoy and I really appreciate what Zack was trying to go with when it comes to Superman in this movie. The idea of him struggling with society. Like, society is seeing, like, okay, is he the hero? Is he the savior that we are looking for? Or is he someone that doesn't want to abide by our rules and is actually not on our side? And that's when it transitions to Batman as well, where Batman has that idea of, this man can crush us and there's nothing we can do about it. So I need to find a failsafe to stop him from doing it. And then we get that whole nightmare sequence as well that plays into that paranormal that he is going through, that Batman is going through, that makes him go over the edge to try and kill Superman. But as for Superman himself, the struggle mentally that he's going through, like, what do I do? And then at one point, he can't see when the bomb goes off and he can't save everyone. And now he's starting to question, like, do I just disappear? And like, he even questions, Superman was never real. I like that. And I appreciate that Zack Snyder was doing that, because Superman is such a high-powered being that sometimes the mental struggle and the mental fight that he goes through is actually greater than the physical fight. So I appreciate that with what Snyder did with that. Now, as for Batman, as we've already talked about, I love the relationship with him and Alfred. I really do. And when we go to that infamous scene, the Martha scene, now, I'm not the biggest fan of this scene. Personally, for me, I would switch it and I would have Batman, as he's about to kill Superman, remember what Alfred is saying to him. And Alfred is actually the one that turns Batman back around to being like, dude, you are turning into the thing that you are trying to destroy. Like, you are going down that dark path. And then having maybe, see, this is where we had that movie of Batman where he loses Robin. We have a flashback sequence of Robin's death playing in his mind. And then that's where he realizes that, oh, I'm turning into the thing that I swear to destroy, to stop. And I think that transition would be better than just the whole Martha sequence happening. Well, it's not god-awful, but it's not the greatest either. I feel like, personally, maybe that could have been a better solution to do when it comes to Batman. But then again, that's the problem that I have with Batman vs Superman, is we don't have the context beforehand before this movie. I really wish we did have that Batman movie and the Man of Steel 2 movie that funneled into this movie, because then it would make it so much better and it would add more layers to the characters and why they're making decisions that they're doing. Now, we also have Wonder Woman turn up in this movie as well, and Wonder Woman 84 really poses a huge plot hole in this whole entire universe, and especially in this movie, because she's out there in 1984 running around beating up people and everything like that, and yet no one knows who Wonder Woman is. I'm pretty sure Batman would have something on that already and know who Wonder Woman is. But it is what it is. But anyway, Wonder Woman turns up in this movie, and she's awesome in this movie. Obviously, we don't know too much about her, but her first movie is great. She's good in this movie. She's got great action sequences. Fantastic. Now, the Lois Lane Clark relationship. I like Lois Lane in this movie, and I like their relationship. I really do. And I feel like there are some conveniences where conveniently Lois Lane pops up at certain points in this movie that you kind of like got to scratch your head and go, okay, it is what it is. I'll let that one slide. But I love the relationship they're having and how they're bouncing off each other and she's trying to reason with Clark. That to me was all fantastic and I really enjoy their relationship. I'm a big fan of this Lois and this Clark. Absolutely loved it. Loved Martha in this as well. I think she's fantastic. Obviously, Diane Lane is just fantastic. She's an absolute world-class actress, and she's fantastic playing as a mother. And that confrontation that she has with Clark when they're on the farm there, and she's talking to him about, you know, Jonathan Kent and everything like that. That whole scene was absolutely fantastic as well. Now, there are some visually absolutely stunning shots. Like, I've got to give it to Zack Snyder. I don't care what you guys can say what you want about his writing, about his storytelling, about his vision, anything like that. But what you cannot deny is Zack Snyder knows how to make a beautiful looking shot. There are some absolutely gorgeous shots in this movie where I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, that is just absolutely beautiful. There are just so many of them. And I think this movie is shot fantastically. I think it's edited well. While I would move certain scenes around and things like that, I still think he did a fantastic job when it comes to the editing side of this and the cinematography. The filter, it is a bit dark, it is a bit greyish, but that is Zack Snyder's vision for this universe, this dark, down-to-earth, realistic version of Superman. And, I mean, it's fine. It's not like anything that's like, oh my god, this is unbearable to watch. It's just what it is, and I don't mind it. I know some people have a problem with it, but overall, look, there are things I would obviously change when it comes to Batman vs Superman. However, I do not hate this movie like I used to anymore. I've actually come around to kind of like this movie a lot more. While I still have those issues of mine, personally, I also didn't like the look of Doomsday in this movie as well. Personally, I don't know, it just didn't feel like Doomsday, it didn't look like Doomsday. I really wish they changed that. I wish Snyder did. But, as I said before, obviously I would love those two movies beforehand. I think having those would enhance this movie and really make this movie a lot better. Changing maybe the villain at the end with the whole Doomsday, changing it to like a Bizarro or something like that, I think would work better. Maybe a recast on Lex. No offense to Jesse Eisenberg, I think he's fantastic. I just think it's a miscast. But overall, this film isn't the worst. That's really, I've come around to actually enjoy this a lot more than previously. So, yeah, I was a bit harsh on it, but the theatrical version, I don't care. It's still awful. The ultimate cut, though, is a lot better and it does elevate it a lot more. So let me know what you guys think of this movie. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What are your thoughts? Smash it down there. Smash that like button. Click subscribe. And thank you for joining in on the Superman Retrospective series. We will go into a new one very, very soon. But I appreciate everything and all your comments down on the Superman videos. And I look forward to our next series. Until then, stay safe and peace out.